Microsoft strikes back at Apple with the Surface Book 2. But they're still selling iPhones and iPads in Microsoft stores. Yeah, that's a fact. That happens now. So are they really competing or just play the intro? So yesterday, Microsoft announced the Surface Book 2, which I've been reading a lot about recently. You probably think, oh, this Apple sheep hates Microsoft. What's he gonna find to diss on with the Surface Book 2? Honestly, not that much. I mean, it's actually pretty impressive of a package. One thing I appreciate in Apple's competition doing is actually trying a more unique approach, and the Surface Book is fairly different from the MacBook in many, many ways. And before we talk about anything else on the Surface Book 2, Microsoft has finally adopted USB-C. It's taken them so long to get here. They're kind of the last people to show up to the USB-C master race, whatever you want to call it. They didn't put it on the Xbox One X. They didn't put it on the Surface laptop. They didn't put it on the new Surface Pros that came out earlier this year. Lots of different companies have been adopting it, but for some reason, Microsoft has shown this hesitation towards it. Now, they finally adopted it. However, it's only with one single port. They still kept traditional USB ports, and they also kept the SD card slot. And they didn't have multiple USB-C ports, literally just one, so it's basically there for external display. It's not really intended to supply power to the Surface Book. I'm sure it can. I'm sure people will experiment with it, but there's a dedicated power supply port that's built by Microsoft specifically that actually uses a form of MagSafe. So I kind of think everyone who had a complaint with the more recent generation of MacBook Pros would probably like the Surface Book quite a bit. Keeping your old ports, keeping your SD card slot, keeping MagSafe while also leaving one port in remain for USB-C, which just kind of shows to me that they're like, all right, we get it. We have the ports, but don't ask too much of it. See, I kind of like the idea of having computers with multiple USB-C ports. That way, you can literally just say, plug the cable into the device. Doesn't matter which port it is, doesn't matter which cable it is. It's just the portless future of where there's only one type of port and one type of cable, making everything easy. Whereas here, USB-C is, present, but it just kind of serves one purpose, which is fine. Not really anything to complain about. They wanted to do a different route than the MacBook. I'm just saying, I thought it would have been kind of cool if you had 2 to 3 USB-C ports instead of just one. That's fine. It's your own design take. So let's talk about specs. These things, I think, are primarily built to be powerhouses. They are extremely powerful. So first off, there's now 2 different sizes for the Surface Book, which is actually smart. That was kind of a complaint I had earlier. MacBook users had options, 13-inch MacBook Pro, 15-inch MacBook Pro. Surface Book users only had the 13-inch version. Now, they have 13.5-inch and 15-inch versions, but they do come at a high price. But before we get into that, these come with the new 8th generation Intel i5 cores. You can start a whole debate on how to pronounce it in the comments below. Whatever keeps you coming back to the video, both in the i5 and i7 configuration. So in terms of processing speed, there's no doubt these things are going to be lightning fast, as well as supporting dedicated video RAM and NVIDIA graphics cards. The 13.5-inch version sports the GTX 1050, and the 15-inch version sports a GTX 1060, which I have to say is incredibly impressive that they're able to stuff such processing power into such a light design. The people who have their hands on the Surface Book 2 already are saying that they're overall very impressed with the weight of it. It appears that the 15-inch version weighs just a little bit over 4 pounds, which for those of you who don't know, is practically the same weight of my 15-inch MacBook Pro. So size-wise, I'm sure these are very similar, as well as weight-wise. Plus, of course, these Surface Books have the option of detaching their keyboard. Keep in mind, though, when you literally rip your laptop in half, some of the processing power will be degraded, as well as the battery life. It's rumored that when it's detached, battery life is more like 5 hours in tablet mode, and I just have to say, no one is pointing out that Microsoft did technically release a 15-inch tablet. Guys, I thought the 12.9-inch iPad Pro was pretty massive. I've moved down to the 10.5-inch iPad. I thought that was a decent size for a tablet, but now Microsoft literally sells a tablet that's about this big. MacBook users out there, imagine if your iPad was bigger than your head, because that's practically what it is. I'd be extremely curious to try these things in person. Resolution, of course, is incredibly high. Something that kind of weirded me out about previous generation Surface Book was that they chose the weirdest resolutions for the display. It was like 3000 to 2000. Now they're finally getting it a little bit weirder, but now they're practically making it 4K. It's a tiny bit under the actual resolution of 4K, but it's just a couple pixels shorter, so just call it a 4K display. On a laptop, which is not bad at all. People messing with them currently are also saying that the detachability mode is a lot more secure now. So when you attach the tablet back to the keyboard, they're saying it's more firm, which is great because that was one of my big problems with last year's Surface Book, which I have used before. When I tried to detach it, that didn't sound right. You held that detach button and it went, and it felt like it was breaking, and whenever I tried the touch input method on the Surface Book, it wiggled a lot. It was not intuitive, so I'm glad to see that they acted on that and made an effort to make it more rigid and more structurally sound. That's good. They're listening to people. But now kind of the tough part. You see, when I was younger, Microsoft was kind of the cheaper option to Apple. Now with this whole Surface hardware team, they don't really care if they're more expensive than Apple. So while specs are very good, yes, and while these are very capable laptops that do a lot of things MacBooks can't, the 13.5-inch one, the cheapest one, starts at $1,500, which is quite a high price to start something at. Not to say it's a bad buy. I mean, you're getting 8 gigs of RAM, you're getting an Intel i5 core, dedicated graphics card, dedicated video RAM. Definitely a decent package. It's just kind of, this is more for a higher end group of users. The 15-inch Surface Book 2 starts at $2,500, which I think with this higher end model, it's getting a little bit too pro market. It's like, okay, we get that you've got great specs, which is very impressive, but are a lot of people really willing to drop $2,500 on a laptop tablet hybrid? I'm sure some of you will, but I'm just thinking, you know, the higher the price point go, the less of a demographic this can appeal to. I personally can't think of many people in my life that could make use for a $2,500 laptop slash tablet. You know, the 15-inch MacBook Pro from Apple probably doesn't have as high as specs as the 15-inch Surface Book 2, but it does start at $2,000, so it's a bit more negotiable. This was a high price point, but some of the justification for it was that it fit in with my ecosystem. It had Final Cut Pro, video software that's optimized for the hardware that allows for really, really good performance, supports AirDrop, connects to my AirPods. You know, it builds into an ecosystem, and with Microsoft, you know, an ecosystem is kind of impossible. Like I said earlier, they literally sell iPhones and iPads in Microsoft stores. Microsoft has pretty much given up on the idea that they can do mobile. Smartphones, unheard of. Their wearable tech, they've discontinued, but I'm glad to see that where it counts, they are making it work. Of course, the price points of the Surface Book only go up from the two I listed to you, mostly dependent on the processor speed as well as the storage configuration. All Surface Books are still limited to a terabyte of solid state, which doesn't make a big deal for me because I have 256 on my MacBook Pro, so it's not much at all. But I would like to mention that MacBook Pros are capable of being maxed out to 2 terabytes of solid state storage, so if storage is a big deal, MacBooks still have the advantage. I also would have liked to see different color options than just their basic silver magnesium. It's a good color, and I'm sure most of you are fine with it, but I just say, it's kind of nice to have options. You know, you showed the Surface laptop in all of its cool colors. You did a good job with that, Microsoft. Let's bring those colors elsewhere. MacBooks come in silver and space gray, and I've had a lot of people say they like the silver, and a lot of people say they like space gray. A little bit of diversity. And also because these are laptops coming out near the end of 2017, it would have been nice to see Bluetooth 5.0. These still sport 4.2. I'm not sure why both Apple and Microsoft are releasing high-end computers that don't support Bluetooth 5. It's like these are high price point machines, and they're for the advanced, you know, the professionals, so shouldn't Bluetooth 5 kind of be default by now? But no, Surface Book 2 doesn't have it, and neither does the iMac Pro. This just kind of confuses me. And overall, the reason I'm not terribly excited about these kinds of things is because I still am not sold on Windows 10. For those of you who don't know, across the hall here at Tailosive Studios, we have the gaming room, and over there we have a gaming PC that I use fairly regularly that runs Windows 10, so it's not like I don't use Windows 10 or I'm not used to Windows 10. Believe me, I've spent a lot of my life fighting Windows 10, and that's one of the reasons I can't get on board with the Surface lineup. I've tried it before. I've reviewed a Surface Pro. It's cool that they have touchscreens and touch input and stuff. My issue with it is for Windows 10 to truly be capable, for it to truly use the apps that work great on Windows and to take advantage of the high specifications on all of these Surface devices, you really need a keyboard and mouse, and that's why I have a hard time understanding why people want to switch to tablet mode if it splits your specifications in half. And people want to use a Surface Pen on something that has a keyboard and mouse connected. Basically good for drawing and really it. So like I said, as price points get higher, it becomes a narrower and narrower demographic. So the Surface Book 2s, I can imagine being very, very useful for people who need to draw or need to do 3D modeling that involves needing a stylus. That way you can have that touchscreen option for drawing and 3D modeling, but also have the processing power for rendering stuff. So for you, it's great, and I'm happy for it, and I hope it works out, but it's just not a lot of you out there. Whereas I think MacBooks just focus on being laptops. They don't focus on trying to separate, break in half, being a drawing device and being a processing power device. I think Apple likes to keep those separate, and I prefer that method. And I think MacBooks in general can appeal to a wider demographic opposed to the Surface Books, which are really just for the elite pro users, which is cool. Nothing wrong with that. And to you pro users, I wish you good luck. I hope Windows 10 updates don't annoy the crap out of you like they annoy the crap out of me. Seriously, like I'll be in the middle of live streaming on that computer, or I'll be in the middle of downloading something, and then suddenly internet speeds will drop like crazy, and it doesn't drop on any of my other Apple devices. So I'm like, is Windows 10 just like backing up all the personal data for your spyware. Other thing that kills me is sometimes they'll say, we need to update right now. If you hit cancel enough times, it will literally start forcefully updating. It will say, no, you cannot cancel this update. We are restarting your computer in 10 minutes. You can't stop it. Windows 10 users have ran into that problem a lot of times. Even if you turn off auto update, you still run into that. So I have a hard time getting used to Windows 10, but I still think the Surface team itself has done a really, really great job. One complaint I've had earlier was that the Surface Pro and Surface Book were too similar. They covered too similar demographics, where now I can see them spreading out a little bit and not competing as much with each other, which was smart. If someone from Microsoft saw some of my videos, thank you for listening. And to all of my regular Apple Sheep fans, no, this isn't worth switching over for because it still runs Windows 10, but it's still a really great piece of hardware to admire, and I'd sure love to try one sometime. And it definitely puts standards higher for Apple so that they can upgrade their MacBook Pros in the future. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.